My name is Julia, and I'm a detransitioner. Those words alone might bring you images of horrendous surgeries gone wrong, chronic pain, or even abuse. Those who do not deny our existence often tell stories of tragedy about us. To some degree, that is true. After I took testosterone, I had vocal damage extensive enough that my only transition-related surgery was a corrective one to prevent myself from going permanently mute. Not only that, my husband is a detransitioner too. We met before he transitioned and went through the entire process together. He was what people would call a classic case, having known since childhood, deciding to transition in early adulthood on the premise that it was his last chance at life. Of course, after 8 years of transition, after all the surgeries, he too was disillusioned. I don't want to focus on that, however. There are enough stories about tragedy. Today, I want to show that the side that the media shows about detransition, the horrifying images of botched surgeries, the tales of people ending up depressed, ill, and unable to function in life due to the negative effects of transition, all those stories are real, but they are not the full picture. I will not dispute that transition is dangerous, unnecessary, and harmful. As well-meaning as many people are in advocating against transition, however, it is too often a message of darkness and despair. It's easy to see why people want to advocate for this position. The idea that children are ruining their lives and essentially killing themselves with lifelong medical issues will certainly be heard by many people, and perhaps even rouse them into action. And yet, it gives a very different message to detransitioners, and worse, those who are currently transitioned. When people talk about those who detransitioned, they talk about the horrific medical consequences of transition. Like a spectacle, detransitioners are put out there as a warning. Beware, parents, for if you do not safeguard your children, they will end up these mutilated husks of beings, barely capable of living anymore, even more mentally unstable. Some even talk about the inevitable disease that comes after treatment, and talk about cancers and other conditions that tend to terrify the masses. It is possible that this vision will make laws change and raise awareness for us. But what kind of picture are we painting for those who are just now discovering that their transition was a futile effort? What of children who are developing doubts? And what of the many who are in the middle of transition? One of the things that prevents many people from detransitioning is the thought that it's already too late. I myself struggled with this thought after starting hormone therapy. Even though I hadn't had many changes, I had already committed, changed my name, and aggressively insisted to those around me that I knew exactly what was right. Admitting that I was wrong was already painful enough. The thought that I could never recover from the physical consequences was one that almost led me deeper into denial. Many who are far gone decide that they cannot go back. I have no proof for this part of my theory, but I suspect that there is a significant percentage of trans suicides that relates directly to this issue. 7 to 10 years after transition, which is the period where suicides tend to be highest, is where many slowly start to realize that their lives have not significantly improved through transition, but where it can feel impossible to turn back. There are some, perhaps, who would reject empathy, those who would call everyone who transitions narcissistic, and in particular would equate male transitioners with predators. People where it doesn't matter if they died or not. I would disagree, and I am sure many parents of those who are affected would also strongly disagree. People who transition are, for the most part, people who are lost, and often who have failed tremendously by society. That is not to say that they bear no responsibility whatsoever in every case, but I caution people to dismiss the hurt and pain that would drive a person to do something as drastic as mutilate themselves. This is especially true for children. We need to save as many people as we can, and while prevention is better, we also need a cure. And for that, We cannot make detransitioners a horrifying spectacle. We need the hope that there is life after detransition, so that people can start living lives not as detransitioners, but as normal people. The last thing that we need is to be defined by the mistakes we made. But is there hope, you might ask? Can life be good again? Is there actually someone who would love a detransitioner? Is there a way to live normally? And to that I say, yes. Yes, there is. It has been years since my husband and I detransitioned. At first, things were tough, and even though medically we are luckier than many, it would have been easy to blame society and retreat from it. It would have been easy to give up on life. But through accepting our situation and focusing on our lives, we were able to recover and improve our life, emotionally, spiritually, and even financially. Things truly do get better. Of course, many, if not all, detransitioners will struggle. After all, the problems that drove them to transition do not automatically disappear just because they realize that transition was not the right answer. However, it is vital to remember that horrifying tragedies happen to many people at many different times of their lives. People suffer similar injuries from accidents and disease, and when considering the amount of other tragedies that could happen to a person, it is not altogether unreasonable to say that being a detransitioner is not as debilitating as being a quadriplegic. And I think that many would agree that a quadriplegic could still live a great and meaningful life. It is true that in the realm of love, detransition comes with an array of challenges that can be tricky to navigate. It can be difficult to find a partner when you feel like you are ugly, or that you have wasted a lot of time that you could have spent working towards a relationship. And yet, many detransitioners do find love. I know a few personally. It's not altogether surprising, in fact. You will find that many other people who have serious physical abnormalities have no trouble finding a loving relationship in their lives. Ultimately, you do not need to appeal to everyone. One is enough. Those who lost the ability to have children will perhaps never fully recover from the sorrow, but it is important to keep in mind that this is something many others struggle with, and something that does not prevent you from doing good in the world and living a life that is meaningful to the people around you. You may even still be able to help raise stepchildren or adopt. In fact, detransition can be an opportunity. It is pointless to think of the past and wish that you had done things differently. You are who you are, where you are, and hopefully you have learned something from the past. Do not think that because you are not the perfect man or woman, you can never be happy. That is the exact same mindset that drives people to transition in the first place. Instead, think that because you are the way you are, the best way forward is to focus on your life and how to improve things for yourself and for those around you. What really matters in life is not how you see yourself internally, but the relationships you have with others. My own detransition is now years behind me, and I've witnessed the transformative effect that detransition can have, both on myself and others. No longer clouded by the obfuscating mist of gender ideology, many people are able to finally deal with the issues that truly made their life miserable in the first place. For example, by overcoming childhood trauma. It's not always an easy road, but at the other end is something that every person ultimately wants. A life worth living. To those who are doubting, to those who are struggling, to those who are worried about their loved ones, do not despair. Life does not end with detransition. In fact, life can truly begin after detransition. Thank you very much for listening.